You're all very welcome to this wonderful, unique, United Arts Club. Now in its 108th year, set up by Eddie Duncan, and the next two members were Councillor Francis Mark, which you are known for their art and perhaps a bit of politics, you can say. Anyway, giants of literature and the visual arts have been members here for many years. People like Yeats, Lennox Robinson, you name them, they're all on the board downstairs. But to bring you up to the current day, if you were a member of this club, it's affiliated to clubs all across the world and that you can stay in. Many societies are based here, the Irish Pen Society, the Irish Hellenic Society, the Wagner and the Byron, to name just a few. Also based here is the third oldest chess club in Europe. I think it's in 150 years old now, I think. And you're all very welcome to this wonderful, stunning show. I think you'll all agree it's really superb. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our very special guest opener, Una Seeley, highly talented artist in her own right, member of RHA, and perhaps you may have seen her recently on that series
Painting the Nation?
Painting the Nation, which is actually going to go on a loop, a repeat from Sunday, anyone who missed it. Yeah. So I'd like you to give a big United Arts Club warm welcome to our very special guest opener, Una Seeley.
What did you forget to say?
About the poetry suppers once a month.
The poetry suppers are once a month.
Well worth coming.
How much are they? How much?
25 for your 3-course and Living Poets awesome.
Of the pier?
Yes.
Yeah. Bargain.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Angel. It's lovely to be here in the Arts Club again. And Brian, who is a drawing colleague of mine at a regular drawing session in the RHA every Thursday. And that's where I first met Brian, but I have known of his work longer than that. Since his first solo exhibition in Dublin, which was in the Crow Gallery, probably about 10 years ago, maybe yes. So I had seen Brian's work before I had ever actually met him. And I was very intrigued by this technique, which he uses of scraper board. But before I get into it, I'm going to say a little bit about that, but really just a bit of background on Brian for those of you who don't know him or aren't aware of his very many achievements. Brian has been a full-time, self-employed artist since he left Art College in 1989, and there are very few artists that I can name that have managed that achievement. It's extraordinary. And he has managed to do this through his own fine art work, through illustration work, and through major commissions that he gets. Notably, several huge successes he has had recently are, he was in the 2016 World Illustration Awards, which had artists from all over the world entering. Brian won the Public Realm Prize for a major piece of work that he had done in, what was the name of the mills? Cromford Mills. Yeah, which is an immersive walk through a larger than life-size blown-up experience. So that was an incredible achievement. He also, for the opening of the GPO Museum last Easter 1916, which opened last year, Brian was commissioned to do 13 or 14 life-size works based on the children of 1916. He has also been one of a very small number of artists who have been commissioned to submit coin designs to the Royal Mint. So that is just going to be, for any artist, that's an incredible honour to think that, one, that you have been invited to submit, and secondly, that your work might actually be on coinage in the future. But what we have here today is Brian's very wonderful, personal, fine art work. I think to understand where Brian is coming from in this work, it was interesting for me to find out a little bit about Brian's background. I knew from knowing him a little bit that he had grown up in the north of England, but I found out more about him that his father had emigrated from Gortahork in Donegal, which is a very strong Gaeltacht area. And Brian, as a typical second generation Irish emigre in the UK, spent every entire summer back at the home place in Donegal. And Brian's mother is Scottish, and she was also from Irish immigration descent as well, but grew up in Glasgow. So there was a lot of influences coming from both sides in this family. And when Brian comes back, I think what the difference between living in this country all the time and coming and visiting and then going away again, I think what you can bring to your work is a very strong sense of the very familiar. He has that genetic connection coming down through generations to these homesteads and these buildings and this vernacular architecture. But he also has that sense of one step removed. So he would go back to England every year, back to schools, back to college, etc. And then when he came back again, you see it again. And I think there's a lot of artists here tonight who will tell you that sometimes you need to, you can become so familiarized with something that you're looking at all the time that sometimes you can't see it. And I think that is what has really enabled you to sort of get to the essence of what these old buildings mean to you, and then also how then you convey that to us, the viewer. The technique of scraper board, which is in nearly all the pieces that we're looking at here today, is also very appropriate as well, because it's what you do with this meat. It's a black, shiny, smooth black surface that you scrape into with a special tool that then reveals the china white clay underneath. And in one way, you're as Brian describes it, you're drawing with light. So you're imagining that your tool is actually the light shining on these surfaces and on these planes, bringing out that three-dimensional detail. But it's also a form of excavation, that you're actually digging. And I think these works really are, they're digging into a past. Some of it is half remembered from Brian's childhood. Some of this work comes from ideas of stories that he's been told since a child by his father. And some are from his very extensive catalogue of sketches, photographs that he takes, that he's built up this incredible resource that he draws into to bring these very, very evocative works into realization. Another question I noticed that there aren't any figures in any of the pictures of the houses. So I asked Brian about this because often when there are no figures, it means sometimes that the artist isn't able to draw figures. Because as you all know, a figure is a very, very difficult thing to draw. But I knew this was totally the contrary with Brian's work, in that he has life drawing from the figure has been an integral part of Brian's practice, all through college and ever since leaving college. He attends life drawing sessions every week, and he also is responsible for running the Thursday evening life drawing session here in the Arts Club for the last 13 years, which is an incredible achievement by any, I mean, just that, because it does take somebody who's going to do that, and it's an amazing gift that you have given all these other artists that you do that. So he explains, so why no figures? There is a portrait of his mother entitled The Pianist on the end wall there. There's another portrait called The Typographer behind the wall here, which are both incredibly good portraits. But the pieces that are talking about the old architecture and the old homesteads, Brian wants the buildings themselves to impart the stories and the lives that are lived and lost in those houses, the conversations that were had, the arguments that were had, and that they are somehow still suggested through the worn the windows, the doors, the acrylic painting down there that's called Split Level, which is a sort of a pun on maybe a modern building, but it is just a house that obviously was built on a very, very inappropriate piece of land and had to be split level. So these are the stories, these are the short stories that are encapsulated in these works. The only instance of a new building appearing is in piece number 1 there, just inside the door, which is called Reflection. And it is an abandoned house, but in the window there is a reflection of the house opposite that the family then built to move into. And I think it's just it was a very poignant and astute observation of Brian to notice those little things like that there was a reflection of the new house within the old. That in Donegal, which is being particularly hit by unemployment, emigration, that there are a lot of not only abandoned homesteads, but there's also, the elements are very severe in Donegal, and I think it was a very hard life to actually live in some of these houses, and that it was it's a very, very human and a reasonable thing to want to improve your lot and build a better house on your bit of land. But it's just a lovely juxtaposition that they're reflected in each other, that one doesn't really exist without the other. The Donegal, Donegal is just, it's a place that I know very well as well. Both of my grandparents are from Donegal, and I can really, these pictures are really speaking to me as a Donegal that is soon to be lost, for all those many reasons. But I think that the title of Brian's show is very well chosen. The word vernacular, as well as meaning the domestic